Yeah, it's just taken them right back down to, well, how did you get the R in the first place? And they haven't got
Yeah,
an answer for
well,
that.
well, they get their R value from circular reasoning,
Yes.
circular arguments.
I think that's going to be the title of this post, isn't it, Nathan?
What?
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to think of one
Uncircular
for the last
reasoning.
one. To be honest, I don't give it too much consideration till after the show. So I normally come with the title after the show, but the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, anyway,
will
I'm
be-
gonna go now. I'm gonna get some groceries and then watch the football final. So
Good man.
Okey-dokey.
Speak to you soon.
yeah, maybe I'll join halfway or something. I don't know. I can basically do multitasking.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Right. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Thanks for doing the show. It was great. It was nice to have that intro part as well. Just do my say before people get in my way.
No, thank me. All are welcome, as always. Apart from Rumpus
Mhm.
today, I just couldn't be asked with him.
Yeah, and Alan B.
Well, I know he's been doxing you in the chats, hasn't he?
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, because I kicked him.
So he doxed you?
Yeah. He doxed some other people as well. But he even threw my telephone number out there, and I haven't seen him back. And I made a promise to him. It's like, okay, I'm never ever going to let you on the panel ever again. So say goodbye, boys,
We'll just
to your
block him,
character,
if
because
that's
you
the
have to
case.
gonna invent a new one, because this one's never getting on again.
Well, just if you blocked him, I mean, I haven't got the facility to do that. But
I
if
haven't
you...
blocked him. I asked you to, but if I'm on the panel and he comes on, I will immediately kick him.
Okay. Well, I've
'Cause
got no control over that, have I? So there's no point you telling me things like this, Owen, because I've got literally no... I can't stop people doing it, can I?
Well, you could if
How?
you have a very good reason. But
How?
yeah,
How
he
do I
doxed
stop
me.
you? How do I stop snipers? If you can tell me that, that's the $64 million question, Owen, because I wouldn't be sat here with my fast mouse, my razor
No,
mouse.
you can
going
ask
click,
me to not do it. But
Oh,
I'm just
right.
saying.
That you think that would work? So I can ask people to stop sniping.
No, not. No, you can ask me.
I can ask you. Okay.
If you're gonna tell me don't snipe him, and you have a good reason for it,
I can't.
that will put some pressure onto me. But I consider you a friend.
I wouldn't do
You've
that.
been very good to me. In
I wouldn't
contrast
do
to
that.
some other people.
I can't electronically control it, and I can't control anybody. Yes, you're right. You know, I can ask, but so what? And I don't mean that with you. I mean that with anybody. I've got no
I
control
know
over
that.
anybody. Literally none.
If you ask me not to snipe him and you give me a good reason for it, then I will say okay, but I have some counter conditions for that.
Well, exactly. So then you're into you're into negotiation, and I'm just not interested. That's why I just I shrug my shoulders to it. What you guys get up to in the sniping is like, I can't stop it, can I? I can't do anything about it.
It's just logical that if people are gonna start doxing and invading privacy and that kind of stuff, that is a border they should not be crossing, and it's even illegal technically. So,
But isn't the whole the point of doxing is that they've gathered up your documents. In other words, they're publicly available anyway.
could be, but it's a violation of privacy.
Not if they're publicly available.
Well, it's not really. Well, yeah, there is data of me, address data and stuff somewhere online,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that people can just do that. There's a law against it, especially in Britain.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I was doxed almost immediately when I started making flat Earth videos, and once initially I remember, I don't know, it's probably over 3 years or maybe even 3 years ago now. Maybe not because it was just after, but either way.
Yeah, I remember.
It stung initially, and then each and every time it happens after that, you go, so what? Who cares? Does it matter? Come round. What are you going to do? Say hello, knock on my door. So what?
Well, with me, my prime concern is that people are going to address me in my official name, and I don't want that.
Right. Fair enough.
I just want to be called Arwin. You do that. I'm very glad that you do, but that is that is just who I am in the flat Earth movement. So I want to keep it that way. If the
Yeah,
trolls
that's
are
fair enough.
constantly going to call me by my real name, that's going to be very disturbing to me.
Fair enough.
Yo,
Hey, hey, hey. I'm going to start in a couple of minutes.
Right.
just before you do, be aware that Jaren's going to join, the real Jaren, not on a sock account. So just be aware, don't kick him.
Don't kick Jaren if he joins. No worries.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. We are joined by The Plain Truth.
Hello, what?
Sleeping Warrior.
Yo,
Arwin.
he's stepped out.
Oh yes, of course he has. And Mark Doxey. How you doing?
Hello, gentlemen.
Good to have you all. Should we do a bit of housekeeping? Anybody object?
Go ahead.
I object.
I object. I'm sick of it.
Well, no, we do need to do it. But if it's okay, I'd like to just invite Mark to have a discussion or a quick conversation about that Jaren video about the NASA one.
Yes.
Because it's one of them topics that can't get old. I mean, it's one thing to have a baller that's done something wrong, or one of us that's done something wrong, and we have a back and forth. But NASA's never going to get tiring because ultimately Jaren's paid some money, and they've got to now produce the money, now produce the goods.
Yes.
But what that does is it creates a legal relationship from NASA to Jaren.
Oh, yeah, it's a breach of contracts, isn't it?
Not just that, they're obligated to provide what they say they're going to do, which is the genuine original footage that's not been edited or altered in any way or whatever of the thing. Basically, if you can falsify that, show that it's been faked in some way, then not only can you get your money back, but you could actually set precedent for being the first person to take NASA to court on what we would call a Sale of Goods Act issue for failing to produce goods that were of, serviceable quality or fake goods or whatever. But it opens a legal relationship up with him. So it's money-wise, it's $1,000, but it's really, really good because he now has something that is potentially actionable in court. How good would that be? Forget about whether it's good evidence or not. It's really good because it establishes a legal relationship between Jaren and NASA. So whatever comes out from it, if he gets anything at all, that there's a legal relationship there once he clicks the pay button. And I can't wait to see what happens, whether he gets something or not. Sure, it's moot. We can all discuss about whether we think he'll get something, nothing, crap quality, high quality, original, altered. Who cares? Whatever he gets or doesn't get, it establishes a legal relationship between Jaren and NASA. Jaren's got a lot of subs. He could fund a legal action if he wanted to. He only needs a good barrister or whatever they have in America. Yeah, and all of a sudden, things start getting interesting from my point of view. That's my take on it.
It is very interesting because the girl he was talking to, or the woman he was talking to, she entered into a contract with him. Yeah, giving him conditions, and he met those conditions, and now she's failed. She hasn't followed through on it.
Well, he does have to pay. The transaction has to succeed, right? And
look, in good faith, he paid, didn't he?
Yeah, it's not in good faith. It's contractual, isn't it? You have to show that there was an offer and acceptance. Yeah. In English law, an offer, acceptance. You have to show an intention to create legal relations, consideration, and then you have to show that there was overall a contract. And ultimately, Jaren can do that because he's shown that he's paid the money. He's had a back and forth. They've asked him for hard drives. Everything's there. But for whatever reason, that one transaction, he got like a fail message. But that fail message brings it all into question because there wasn't a contract at that point because payment wasn't accepted. But now he has got it accepted. They've got to produce it. Would you want to be the person at NASA now responsible legally for producing legally qualified material and now establishing a legal relationship with somebody that they've paid for? I don't think so. I wouldn't.
Yeah, if you, I've tried this myself just over a speeding fine. He's trying to get the person that instigated the proceedings against you. I mean, does he have a contract with that individual woman?
He has the contract with whoever received the money. In other words, NASA Inc. or whatever NASA's official name is. It's a corporation, isn't it? NASA's a corporation. It's not state, so they're a private enterprise. They're funded by the state, but they're a private entity, so they are actionable in court. As far as
the person who speaks up on their behalf, I mean, corporation means dead speak, doesn't it?
No, court. It just means capable of being sued.
Hi, Jaron.
What's up, guys?
Hi, Jaron.
Good morning. What's up, guys?
Hi, Jaron.
Good morning. Sorry, let me. What's up, guys?
Hi, Jaron.
Good morning. That was my bad.
No worries.
Are we there now? Yeah.
Just talking about you.
Jaron, that video that you put out that we got today, absolutely fantastic. The circus that's going on between you and NASA.
Oh, what a joke that is, huh?
Well, you're not the clown; they're the clown.
But can you imagine if a flat earther did this, right? Whatever goes on or doesn't go on in flat Earth, if we made that kind of mistake, right, it would never ever be allowed to slide. It would always be known that Jaron did whatever wrong, and that would be what you would be known for. It would be tagged on you forever. You know, a bit like Miles the Liar Davis kind of thing. But none of them are going to go. Oh, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just, it's NASA. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, they'll make every excuse in the book for it.
They'll just excuse it. They'll just say it's okay. It's NASA, and we're like, whoa.
It makes any sense. Yeah, they've just been trying to delay it.
Hey, Nathan Oakley is a retard. So
don't worry too much about the trolls. We got them covered. So we could do with a couple of placeholders, just in case, because whilst Darwin's not about, I think he's doing something. A couple of placeholders from chat, just join, just so we get a bit of a buffer, because we are going to get a load of attack now. So people out there, just join for the sake of joining. Nate, two-dimensional.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Okay.
Sean,
so everything's filling now.
Hey, Sean. I'm sure Sean is good too.
Just saying hello. What up? Placeholder.
Great, that's 10 of us.
So come on then, Jaron. Tell us where you're at with this request, and what's your actual views on it? Are you thinking it's as ridiculous as what it sounds?
Well, I mean, the reason behind the request is because I don't think that they actually did the spacewalk. I think it was all a lie. I think that they had to do some sort of a golf stunt, a promotion for a Canadian golf outfit. And the video itself, that there's only 2 to 4 minutes. It's available online, and it looks wrong to me. It looks like it's done in a different spot. It doesn't look like a normal spacewalk. So I actually just wanted to find the rest of the spacewalk, and then when I couldn't find it anywhere, I said, there's a chance that they just lied. They did this like on some sort of, I don't know, wherever they do their stupid spacewalks, and told people that they did a 7-hour spacewalk, and then just produced this 2-minute or 4-minute video of them hitting the golf ball. So from the beginning, you could tell that they're just trying to like delay, is what it seems like. And it's funny because my wife told me from the beginning, she said, they're just going to delay it, and then they're going to fake another one. They're just going, I'm like, they can't do that. And so they're not going to get everybody together to fake a spacewalk. But at this point, it's been 5 months. So they had plenty of time to do whatever they needed to do. I mean, they could have hired new astronauts and taught them to go to space by now. I mean, come on.
Do you think that you're actually going to get? Do you think you're going to get anything off them, even if it's crap? Do you think that you get anything off them?
Yeah, no, I do think I'll get something. I mean, they can't not give me anything.
Because they've released something officially, right? There has been an official release.
Release of what?
Well, didn't you say that they did it for a Russian outfit or something? Whatever the reason for the original recording that they released was like 2 minutes. You will at least get that, right?
Oh no, I'll get that. They'll give me something else. I don't know if it'll be a collection of other spacewalks or maybe like cuts. Because I don't know if you noticed, but she kept conceding different things. Like, oh well, by the way, there's only one helmet cam. It's like, okay, whatever. Now, by the way, it's we don't have cameras on all the station over there, so there might be times where there's nobody there. It's like, okay, whatever. So they're just gonna have to put something together. But I'll be able to tell from that if I was right, if they never did the spacewalk, or if I was wrong. But at this point, it just seems like a joke that it's taken this long. The fact that they pretended like they couldn't see the payment when you know, clearly they could have noticed that if they declined it, which is what it looks like, then they would have noticed that, and they could have just said right from the beginning, oh no, we declined it, and you need to talk to your, you know, credit card company, tell them that we declined it. But they never said anything like that. They just kept pretending like they didn't see a payment, until the final, you know, at the end they finally said, oh yeah, we did see it. Call your, you know, bank and tell them to cancel it. When I did that, they said, oh well, we need a letter from NASA saying that it's canceled because it's still sitting there waiting for them to collect. So I mean, I don't know how credit card situations like that work, but obviously there must be something where they have to basically collect the payment, because my credit card wouldn't release it until 30 days.
Yeah, the way we have it in England is if we've had payments get held before, and we can instigate it our end, or the card company can instigate it on our behalf. But ultimately, it's down to the customer. Not the customer. It's down to the provider to release it themselves manually for us logging into it and pressing release. But it can be done by the company as well. So whoever does it. But ultimately, if you've got a grand sat there, you're going to want to take that money, aren't you? You're not going to let that money sit there and do nothing. So it's like, why haven't they done it? They can do it. I know they can do it because it's e-commerce. It's not that difficult to do. They can fix it. My query is, perhaps it's an intentional barrier that no matter what happens, no matter what hurdles you jump, it will always not take that payment, because it's like the you know, the Antarctic expeditions where you can't actually join them. You can't pay the money to go on them when they claim that they can go over certain parts. Some of the ones that go around the edges, yeah, sure. But the ones that claim that they can go deeper inland, you can't buy a seat on them things because they won't let you go on it. But they claim that you can go on it. Doesn't mean you can actually go on it. And I think that what they're doing is deliberately putting a big barrier in your way, so that if you get over all the other barriers before, you will fail at this last one and it'll just not go through. That's my view.
I just disagree. I think that they're just, everything seems like it's a delay. It doesn't seem like their goal was to get me to go away. If that was the goal, they would have upped the price to, you know, 15,000. I mean, you know, to just say 1,000 and then I got over that hurdle, it just seems like they're delaying. So I do think that they're putting together something. I'm going to get something, and how terrible is that? I don't know.
But don't you think that 1,000 is going to do exactly that on the next? Have you reapplied for it at the same price, or have they give you a new price or what?
No, it's same price, and I paid this time. It did not say declined, so this time there's a transaction number, and I did the same method. It's just that was on the 12th, 12th, and I didn't hear anything on Friday, and then they're gone the weekend. So today I should hear.
Well, you know what you need to do?
Sunday, sorry, tomorrow.
What you need to do is find another piece of footage that you're not comfortable with, that you think might have been faked or dodgy in some way. And let's be honest, there's loads. And make the request for that and see what price they give you back for it, and then basically pay for it again. If it's because what I think will happen is that £1,000 has been set high enough so that the average Joe Blogs isn't going to have the money for it, because no one's going to pay £1,000 for footage, right?
Isn't that a joke to start with? I mean, why would we have a 2006 spacewalk that you don't have digitally stored somewhere, that you have to transfer it? I mean, it's just a joke.
And for you to supply the hard drive as well, that was a joke as well.
Well, that's just another obfuscation technique, isn't it? They're just that is just a circus to getting you running around buying something. And if you were actually concerned about your security, there is no way you would ever accept anything from a member of the general public to put into your network. You've got to be joking.
No way.
No way.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's like the whole moon landing thing, which people find, they forget the fact that they say there's 400,000 people that were involved in that. So imagine you're going to send people to the moon for the first time ever. Would you employ the most amount of people ever? Would you contact all the companies across the nation and say, we all need you to put in little tiny bits to this mission? No way. You would keep it controlled to make sure that people stay safe. You wouldn't just divvy out the jobs to every Harry and Mary across the country, which is what they did, but they did that to get people to buy in. Once you have people who have touched part of that rocket or part of the LEM, you have 400,000 people in the country that are all invested in that mission. It's just ridiculous. It would never.
Isn't it really interesting that the delivery guy couldn't make delivery on the first occasion for whatever logistical reason? I mean, he's got no reason not to make the delivery unless he genuinely can't make it, right? It just seems that they gave you an address that they knew was unobtainable, and the guy would never actually get it to them for whatever reason. So that to me seems like another barrier that is just deliberately there to try and make it difficult.
Yeah, it's been bullshit. And to be honest, I mean, if it was like a personal thing where I would have already given up. It really has been that kind of nonsense where you shouldn't have to deal with people on that kind of level, to the point where I started getting rude in emails and I mean, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense what they're saying. For her to say, oh, we don't handle payments. It's like, what do you mean? You told me to pay you. How you can't just have somebody pay you and then say, "Oh, we don't handle payments. Call some other office." What?
I got a question. Jaron, is there a specific reason for the 2006 spacewalk, like in the NASA.gov, to test aircraft or whatever? A specific reason for it?
It's if you go online and you look up golf, look up astronaut hits longest golf shot or something like that. There's about a 2-minute or 3-minute clip of an astronaut out on the what they call the porch. He hits a golf ball. I don't even think he hits it. It looks like he misses it. But and then they say, okay, we're going to put the golf club back in the ISS, and then the video ends, and that's all you can find. And it always has looked weird to me because of the background color. I don't know. I have a video editor where I can change the the colors, and it's like a darker gray than usual. Usually they put like a black behind there, but this time it's like a darker gray. So I wanted to see the rest of it because it just looked, that spacewalk looks weird to me. Something looks wrong with it. So I just wanted to see the rest. And it's impossible. I've checked archive.org. I've checked every different avenue. So then when I looked it up, I found out the reason they did that golf stunt was because some Canadian golf company paid them to do this promo. So then I went looking in further and just found news articles saying, oh, today, as part of a 7-hour spacewalk, they also did this little golf stunt. And I said, no, I bet you what they did is they collected the money for doing the golf stunt, and they went out there for 2.5 minutes, wherever they go out. If it's in a pool, I don't know. If it's in a soundstage, and if they're on wires, how the hell do I know? And they just did the 2-minute or 4-minute little thing and then went back. That was it. So they were able to collect the money from the golf thing, tell people that they did the spacewalk.
But there's nothing worse than a liar.
Sorry, guys.
There's no worse attribute in humans than
video
when
just finished
deceptive or fraudulent.
Sorry about that.
Sneak peek.
So I think that's what's going on, at least. That I think that they didn't do a spacewalk. So now when I'm calling out trying to see that spacewalk, they're going to have to put something together. But by them telling me first that there's only one person with a helmet cam, that means that they can put any kind of helmet cam, and that's what they're paying the money for. I mean, that's what they're taking the money for, to have somebody put together what looks like a spacewalk in every way. And I won't probably be able to I would have to go looking at all past spacewalks and see if they used, but I bet you they have like, what do you call it? Like a B-roll. They have outtakes or whatever from other spacewalks. They'll probably be able to piece together and then have some video of just emptiness and say that's the spacewalk. That's my guess.
That's ridiculous, because in most of the spacewalks you find at least details on what the aircraft used and what the mission was to, I don't know, connect with the ISS to bring whatever supplies and stuff. But that one not having any details on what was the mission for is really off.
Yeah, it doesn't say what they did or nothing. Just that they did a 7-hour spacewalk, and they also included this golf stunt. So, no, I mean, and I'll be able to tell that too. I mean, if I've seen so many spacewalks, if what I get is the worst of everything I've ever seen, then it's more proof for me, which is really what I'm looking for.
I think in terms of the pillar to post rigmarole that you've had, which just seemed like dealing with a cable company. If you've ever tried to change your TV package, they shunt you from pillar to post. But I don't think any of the people you're dealing with individually have the slightest or vaguest notion that they're in any way doing anything wrong. It's all system driven. So these processes will be set up in this manner to fail in the way they have. The first payment will be designed to do that. That's just programming. But ultimately, I think the individuals you're dealing with, and I say this because I could. It was palpable, your frustration. You can tell how annoyed you're getting, and who can blame you? But I think that's system driven as opposed to an individual failing on some person that's working at NASA. As far as they're concerned, they'll be trained on a process and they'll just execute that process. And if they're not responsible for something, they will just say, no, not my department, just like the cable company would.
Yeah, it's just like the girl at the beginning when, she sends me the price, and I sent 2 or 3 emails after asking questions, or, hey, I'm making sure I'm going to get my tape. I don't want to just give you the 1,000. And then she just comes back on that 23rd and said, sorry, you didn't reply, and you didn't, reply in time. We didn't get your reply. Well, what she's talking about there is I don't get to ask questions. It's I made a request. They made a price, and that's the deal. I have to pay the price within the certain amount of time. They're not going to, they don't want questions. That's not like, so I'm sure that's her job, is to not pay attention to questions. Or
keep you at arm's length.
Wait for the price, wait for the payment. If then nobody pays, then they cancel it out. That's why she keeps saying, she's tried so many times to say, we've dropped your case. We've closed the case. That's their goal, is to close as many cases as possible. But you're right. I don't think she knows that she's backing lies. I don't think that. I think she's just been taught a certain way, and that they want to do as little work as possible.
Well, it's exposure of something that you mentioned this earlier, which is when you've given this example multiple times with things like the shuttle. So if somebody's built an O-ring for a shuttle, they've had their hands on it, and therefore they feel intrinsically linked to that mission. Therefore, the mission is validated in their mind. And that's part of the compartmentalization that NASA does when they're building stuff and subcontracting out here, there, and everywhere, so that there's more people that can verify this actually happened. Even though they've not had any involvement with anything going to space, they've just built a component to a spec that they've, presumably spent a lot of administration and time to get to a spec so that it does a particular function. But they're not going to see it get launched into space. But that's that compartmentalization, whereas it's so much more widespread. All of these people that are dealing with you now will undoubtedly be very proud that they work for NASA and they're part of something that's amazing, and they're just doing their job, and that's all there is to it. But ultimately speaking, this is another example of the compartmentalization designed to keep this deception well and truly away from the public, even if they get a little sniff of it.
Right. It's like, have you heard that, I don't know if it's a saying or whatever, they talk about like 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. It's like, if you basically take any actor in any movie, you can find 6 connections. You'll always get to Kevin Bacon. That's how easy it is. This person was in this movie with this person with this in this movie, and this person was in Tremors with Kevin Bacon. And it's the same thing with NASA. What they do is make sure that, just like you said, those employees, they have children, they have brothers and sisters, and their brothers and sisters say, no, my sister works for NASA. So the more people you have out there that work for NASA, that have families, that have children, that have a husband, it's better to have, you just spread it out. And then people feel like, well, it can't be fake. My aunt works for NASA. What are you talking about? My aunt makes, satellites. My aunt works in the IT department. So yeah, that's the way you keep the deception going, is nobody knows what's really going on.
Jaron, on a different note, given that this isn't like a baller or a flat earther making a mistake, this is real. This is like proper important, right? This is something that you could never get bored of listening about, and you should drum it on all the time, because people are really going to be interested in it. But my question is, what's the risk of making it high profile in terms of keeping it live? Do you reckon there's any risks involved in it?
I guess I'm a big believer in like forcing their hand. You just got to keep putting pressure on them. In fact, today, I don't know if anybody, maybe somebody can find it, but I don't know if you've ever seen that video of Tim Peake where he's talking with Sky West News, or what's it called? I don't know. It's a UK news thing, Sky something. And he's doing the little experiment on a track. And, just the other day I was looking for that video and I cannot find it anywhere. It appears to be taken down, and just things like that I think are important, that very few people might notice them, but I notice things like that. I've noticed all the things that they've changed. The Stephen Hawking being not on the ALS list of people who have ALS, and then I make a video about it, and then 2 weeks later somebody says now he's on the list. Same thing with that software, that planetarium software that I was showing people. You could go back to 10,000 BC or 20,000 AD, and the Polaris never moved. And then shortly after that, they changed it so you can only go back to 1500 or ahead to 2500, so that they didn't have to move Polaris. So all those things are evidence to me, and that's why it's so tough when people say, why do you believe the Earth's flat? What's your best evidence? It's all the evidence. It's not just one thing. It's all those things. They're making changes constantly. How about the Earth.null school? That is one of the biggest evidences that, here's a map that simply is just a polar projection map. And because of the flat earthers, and because of the fact that it made sense, and all of a sudden you could see weather patterns like nothing else, all of a sudden they remove it and lie about it. The guy said, oh, it's a bug. It's a bug. I'm going to fix it. No,
what I meant was, when I said, do you think there's any risks? I meant it in the conspiratorial. Do you not get a little bit paranoid that there might be some bloke parked in a dark car in a suit with sunglasses on at the bottom of your road watching you?
Nope.
I'm using that as an analogy. I don't mean that literally.
No, that's why I think staying more public is better. It's the whole thing when people say, don't you think if you were telling the truth, if what you're saying is actually true, then they would shut you up? And it's like, no, they need the crazy flat earther. They need they want that, and it would be worse for them to have something happen to me than not. I mean, that would be the worst thing to happen, is something happened to me and then everybody finds out, oh, Jaren was killed or Jaren committed suicide or something like that. That's going to cause more eyes on this than they want.
Yeah, that's the next question then. Don't you think you should at least change your intro a little bit with a disclaimer on it that says something like, if ever I'm found dead, they've got me, or something like that? Because that's what you get. You might be getting towards the point where you have to start telling people that you'll never commit suicide if you've
I've already said that. I've said that numerous times on my radio show. Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time that it will never happen. I've never have no suicidal thoughts. I think it's probably your ticket for sure in the wrong direction as far as if people believe in an afterlife or not. I believe that you are rewarded or not based on how you treated life here. So if you end your own life, that is the equivalent of saying that you want non-life. So if there is a chance for having any kind of afterlife or another existence like this somewhere else, or I think you can kiss it off when you commit suicide. So as bad as it gets, I would never do that.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that you should maybe consider putting it on the disclaimer on your intro, because if you push this and it gets the momentum, because I'm right in thinking that in American law, if you pay for a service, you have that legal relationship at that point, right? And up until now, you've not had any legal relationship with NASA because there's nothing that you can sue them for, right? Because you can't prove a loss. But now, if you pay for a service that they give you, which you can then prove is fake, because I mean, let's be honest, you could probably do a crowd surf, raise another £1,000 or dollars, give it to a photo forensic analysis guy, and say, right, is this real, right? And he could probably come back with you and say, nah, it's fake as fuck, and tell you the reasons why. But if you have a legal relationship with NASA, and then you have evidence that shows that it's fake, that's ultimately potentially devastating, right?
Maybe, I guess. I don't know what you'd be able to. What's your losses? I mean, is your loss just $1,000?
Sure, but that you set the precedent that NASA have lied, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a interesting idea. I mean, I've had somebody contact me, a lawyer that said was I interested in doing a quid pro tam case. I don't know if you ever heard of that before. But I guess it's like some lawsuit that's a hush-hush lawsuit against the government. You have to basically submit paperwork showing that there's some wrong that's been done, and then they pay you out under the table, and you can never talk about it.
Sounds dodgy as hell, that though.
Yeah, I know. I told the guy no, thank you.
Yeah, but I just think that if you have that established legal relationship as a consumer with a business, which NASA is, that opens up a whole new potential can of worms. Which, if you've got the backing financially that you do have, that, I mean, even though it's only £1,000, it's not the £1,000. It's just the fact that if it turns out to be dodgy and you can prove it in a court of law, that's worth running it just for that point.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't actually think about it that way. Because I'm guessing that whatever they would give me would be equivalent to the spacewalks that they put out there now.
Or a bullet in the head.
I mean, that's the worst thing that they could do.
No, they could attack your character with trumped up charges.
Yeah, no, that they can do. I mean, that's.
I don't think they can do that legally.
Well, no, no,
mud sticks. They could just make a suggestion, couldn't they?
No, not in a legal case. You couldn't.
Okay.
You can't attack the character in a legal case.
Yeah.
Not here anyway. You may be able to over there, but what I'm thinking is, it's not about the £1,000. It's just about now you have that legal relationship, which is special, and it is something that they're not going to want to mess up. Which I think probably will be the reason why you get absolutely nothing. Shout out to Was Not Was. But ultimately, I think that if they give you nothing, they'll just give you your money back, because that's less risky for them than giving Jaren.
I might get to that point, because that makes sense to me that they just say, "Oh, when we were looking at the video, there was some stuff that was, national security, and
yeah,
pay you back." I mean, that makes the most sense. That wouldn't surprise me, actually,
because that way they don't have to. They're not running any risks of potentially being sued for failing to provide information or evidence that was credible. Right? They wouldn't then be exposed to the risk of being caught out lying.
Right. I mean, they can't let that out. They can't. I mean, that's the scary part about this whole thing, and I can't picture them ever. They're not going to ever admit it. So what's their end game?
Never release it, no matter what.
Right.
That's my view. I mean, I'm not saying that's what will happen, and I don't mind being wrong on that. But I think that if they take your money, they enter into a legal contract with you, a legal relationship with you, and it's actionable in court. And there will be a way of, I mean, I would know what to do here, but over there would be the equivalent way, and it'd be very similar, where you could take them to court, and you don't have to accept the money back either. you could take them to court just for the judgment against NASA that says that they give you dodgy. I mean, obviously we're running before we can walk here, but it's just interesting that you now have that legal relationship. If once they've accepted payment, which have they accepted payment at this point?
Well, yeah, it's listed on my statement as a transaction. It's not a pending transaction as it was before.
Ooh,
yeah, you are definitely that was the point that you established the contract, because at the point that the payment was pending, then no, they haven't actually accepted payment, but now they have.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. That is the point where the contract's formed and you have the legal relationship with NASA, which puts you in a really powerful position because you have the backing financially from your subs and whatnot to be able to do this if necessary. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just pushing the idea that it could actually be something really interesting. Forget the £1,000. It's just the point that if they do fake it and you can prove it, it's not about the money. It's about the principle of whether or not it's legit, that what they've done. And if it's not, then I don't know, it just opens doors, doesn't it? For me, it does anyway.
And if you do some searches about NASA and FOIA cases, they're usually just rude to people. They usually just respond and tell them flat out, you're not going to go fishing through our files, or it's just
it's probably Red's rhetoric in his back garden somewhere doing all these emails. On a different note, Jaren, you did the non sequitur discussion with Reds, yeah?
Yep, the debate.
Yeah. Regardless of how you interpret, because everyone's got a view on it, right? And everyone thinks one thing or another, right? And my view on it is, I think what you did was really quite cool because I saw it as trolling. I might be wrong on that, but I saw you as trolling them. But regardless of what your view is on it, my question is, why did you go to the non sequitur channel when Nathan's friendly and you could have come here and they would have come? Why non sec?
Well, because way back when I made that challenge that I would debate Red if he's did the challenge, he never did it correctly. He gave it to Halstoy. They just did it wrong. And then a few weeks ago, or probably a month ago at this point, or whatever, they came back and said, he kind of was talking to me in Skype and said that they could model it. And I really at that time didn't think that they could. And so I told my wife, they probably will be able to. But I said, I want to force, like I said, it's fine to force their hand, and it's not like I'm afraid of a debate with Red. So I said, I'll go ahead and force his hand. Well, they basically showed some program that basically rockets can, angle themselves in any direction. They can do whatever. They're like Superman, right? Anything that you would think it can't do, it can do, because it can just gimbal over to a new position and stay there in its orbit. So it's like, okay, whatever. If you're going to model that and give it superhuman powers, then that's fine. So he basically modeled it correctly, and then I told him that that's fine. He can have his debate, and that's where he chose to have it. So I had nothing to do with that. I couldn't really say no, but I have a video that I'm uploading in about 10 minutes or so. It should be done, and it is definitely the end of the my going on that non sequitur show, because those guys are flat out liars. You'll love the video. It's classic.
I agree. What they did with us, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Nathan and I went on with the Isle of Man stuff. And what they did was basically declared the evidence that was presented as void without ever considering the evidence in hand. It was declared void without any consideration whatsoever. Rumpus's explanations or conclusions were accepted without considering the evidence. Right. And I was like, are you kidding me?
They have no desire for the truth at all. That's not the point. And that's what my video points out is, and that I feel bad for that guy, Kyle. Well, I call him basically, pussy and everything else in this video, and a coward, because he told me in private conversations on Skype that he doesn't believe in the moon landing, and even followed it up with, no, I think that they faked it, and I think Russia and they were in the space race. So he tells me all this stuff about the moon landing. I was like shocked. I said, wow, there's not a lot of people that back science that are like you, that will question things. Usually they're just all full in or full out. And he said, no, I understand that, the car in space by Elon Musk looked shady. So I was like, oh, yeah, what you're saying there is impressive, because I never hear that from anybody who backs science. Well, then I saw that video, the 20 questions flat earthers can't answer. And on one of the questions, it was Kyle Curtis saying that, hey, how could it be possible that NASA and these space agencies are faking things? I'm like, what the F? Like, that guy told me he doesn't believe it. So how are you questioning people with the same belief as you? And I brought that up to Steve one time when he was asking me for a wrench to my chat room. I'm like, no, dude, I already caught your co-host in a flat out lie. And he says, no, he believes he went to the moon. I'm like, no, he doesn't. He told me he doesn't. He's like, no, he was being sarcastic. I said, what do you mean? I even asked him, are you seriously don't believe we went to the moon? He's like, no, he was being sarcastic. Well, just last night on that flat earth roast, I sent an email to Steve during the roast and said, ask Kyle publicly right now what he thinks about the moon landing. And so he asks him 5 minutes later, and Kyle says, do I believe we went on the moon? No. And I was like, what? And then he said, see what that is? That's called being sarcastic. So he's a flat out dirtball liar.
Yeah.
And, either he lied to me or he's being a coward, one or the other. And then Steve starts going through a bunch of, they're just lying. It's just all lies. So the video will show that clearly. And there's no reason to go anywhere near that show anymore. Like I said, I did the thing for Red, and yeah, I was, you can call it trolling. I mean, the problem is Red always wanted to have this debate, and he kept begging, or not begging, but he kept saying, you have to argue your model. That was their whole goal, is let Jaron argue his model, because they know I don't really have a model that I back fully, or no flat earther has a model. In fact, if you ask the question, their whole thing was, if you ask somebody what model better matches reality, well, you'd be disingenuous to say anything really other than the globe matches reality, because there's no other model. Doesn't make the globe true at all. It just means that they've had hundreds of years to put together a package that people think better models reality. And they might be right. So I said, okay, that's what they're going to want me to do. So they basically wanted me to spend the entire time trying to defend my model. And I just said, no, screw them. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go on there and I'm going to speak to the audience like I always do, and try to get my point across the best I can without backing my model at all. And I think I did a decent job at that. And I knew I was right about what I thought about Red, that there's no way he would have evidence that would sway any flat earther to become a globe earther. No. And if you watch that debate, there was nothing that he said that would make anybody that's gone far enough to start believing that the earth is not round to say, I'm going to go back now because Red said that Sly Sparkane and 6 people got the right angles to the sun. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So in my opinion, I try and weigh the kind of the negatives that could come out of it. I didn't see any negative that could come out of it. Now I see a bunch of people saying, oh, Jaron threw in the towel, or Jaron now backs the globe, or just nonsense. I'm used to it at this point. It's my own way, and it's how I do things. People sometimes are not happy with it. Even people, very close to me aren't really happy with the way I do things sometimes, but it's the way I want to do it.
Well, is the video just for the patrons, or is it general?
Nope, this is for everyone, yeah.
Good.
Well, one last thing, and then I'll give way an open mic after that. Next time you decide to do a hangout or a debate with someone that's not on our side, do it on Nathan's channel, because without blowing smoke up his arse, I'm pretty sure that Nathan, if he had to, could moderate equally as good as anybody else. He wouldn't have to directly be involved. That being said, he is pretty good to have as an ally. So ultimately, let's not massage their egos by going to them.
No, and I think how do I say this? I don't think that winning debates is important. I mean, I know a lot of people might feel differently here about that, but to me, winning a debate does not mean something is true. So it's not. I'm not a big fan of debates because I don't really see the point. It doesn't change the other person's mind, and it doesn't establish fact. I'm more interested in the truth, not about winning a debate. So
sure, but on the other hand, those that are on the fence, and there's a lot of people on the fence, there are loads of new people that are coming into this that are responding to billboard advertisings or whatever. Those people that are genuinely, I mean, there's a physics teacher that I had a back and forth with recently, and he's really on the fence. He can't be because of his job, but he's here and he's asking all the right questions. So there are people that are new to it that are on the fence, and even if the debate doesn't prove or change people's minds there and then, at least it presents the argument that this is credible as an alternative to the idea that we live on a spinning testicle. So it's not necessarily about the debate. For me, it's more about the impression that, well, actually, there is something here that's serious that people are giving time to. Is it possible that this might not really be true? Now, you do that through your own videos, but the debate side of it also influences people if it looks like there's a credible debate there. Even if you lose, I agree, but it just adds weight to the argument.
The direction you guys have gone in the past 2 or 3 months, like I said when you were on Raw, has been awesome, because we're starting to establish the idea of it being a belief, which is what it is. And just recently, when I've found out how deep the scaling and variance goes, where you are able to scale the universe however you want, meaning you can change the size of the sun and moon, and as long as their angular size remains, which is basically gives you an infinite amount of choices. You can put the the sun at what is it, 330,000, I'm sorry, 330 million miles away, and have it be 3 million miles across. And then all you need to do is scale everything else accordingly, and no observation on Earth would change. That alone is enough proof for me that that it's not worth even listening to what they're saying, because it's just numbers, it's just math. And I've heard you guys talking about it before, where people think that people went out on boats and measured this stuff, and it's not. Imagine that we all woke up tomorrow and we didn't know anything about the distances to any of the astronomical bodies. How do you think that people figured out the first one? I mean, this is the part of the story that doesn't jive. There is no way that you could. They say, "Oh, well, we figured out the sun because we saw Venus move." Okay, well, what's the size of Venus? How do you know how far Venus is? So it's a cleverly told story where they, at every turn, you're depending on something else, and there's no beginning to it. They say, "Oh, well, they knew that the moon, when it makes a perpendicular to the Earth and the sun, well, how far is the moon? How far is, what are you talking about? How do you know how far one of those bodies is?" So it is all just guesswork. And they came up with a number, but that's why Copernicus had 3 million and Kepler had 15 million and Newton had 50 million, is because it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as it works out mathematically and can predict where the bodies would be or the lights would be at a certain day, certain time, then they were happy with it. It didn't matter what the actual real distances were. I don't know when it became that they started believing that these were real places anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I accidentally or inadvertently had asked Lewis Hackett what was the distance to the sun, and basically what that told me was that aside from the fact that he knows that it's 93 million miles, the question was, how do you know? And he sat there blankly looking into space almost, and it ended up being a bit of a meme because it went on for a while because it gained traction and people laughed at him as a result of it. But nonetheless, the question's valid. How does anybody know the distance? I mean, I asked you about 2 weeks ago, where does that 93 million mile distance value come from? And it comes from the transit of Venus, but no one's ever, they've calculated it based on parallax, right? Which, as you correctly said, is a calculation of scale, not of actual distances. So you can slide the scale up or down any distance you want because it's a scale, but it's not a measurement, and nobody knows.
If you know one of them, then you can actually work out everything else. But if you don't know
exactly what I said.
You can't work out.
Well, which is the one that they know? I mean, everyone goes to the sun, right? 93 million miles. Most people know that number. But which is the one that they know to get everything else? And there doesn't appear to be one common denominator that gives you everything else. What is it? Who knows? And the reality is, Lewis doesn't know it, but I don't know it. Nobody knows it. It comes from a calculation based on parallax, as far as I can tell. And ultimately, a calculation based on parallax is a scale, not a measurement. But everybody thinks that 93 million miles is fact.
And then if you move the sun or move the moon, and then people would say, "Oh, well, the gravity will be different." Well, no, you just change the mass of the sun or change the mass of the Earth, and who the hell is testing those? Well, you could just send somebody else to their shed and say, "Go do this test and make sure that the Earth comes out at this mass." Well, you don't know the mass of the sun. So
pushing it one stage further, when ballers say things like, "Well, the sun and the moon are both round, and all the other planets are all round. It makes sense that we must be round," and we all laugh at that. But if you were to push that one step further, you could equally then logically, using that analogy, conclude that we must be the same size as the moon, because the moon and the sun are both the same size. They look the same size, and we must therefore be that same size as well, logically. I'm not saying that we are, but that's the logical process that you could then apply to if you're going to accept that we must be round because the sun and the moon are round.
Yeah, I mean, something's terrestrial and something's celestial. I mean, I don't know why people have to compare those two things. Anyway, it seems to me that the Earth is the largest thing that there is. It's ridiculously huge. I mean, if you've ever flown in a plane from one side of the United States to the other, it takes like 7 hours, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. You're flying in a plane 500 miles per hour, and it's still taking you 7 hours to get somewhere. And then to have somebody tell you that the sun that we see in the sky is 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It needs to be in their model and the distances and everything that they have. But to just say that without any kind of proof, it doesn't fly. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Earth is the biggest thing that there is to me. Things fall to the Earth. The celestial things are different. I don't know.
Well, with the curvature one, they always say, "Oh yeah, but how many degrees is that? 1 degree is 69 miles, right?" And what they're actually doing there is changing the units to make it sound a lot smaller. But you can do that with the sun and the moon as well, because whatever your distances are, if you say the sun's 93 million miles away, that's a huge figure that nobody can really. You can't approximate that in your mind as just how far that really is. It's just a massive number. But if they call it 1 AU, that all of a sudden seems totally like, that's something we can work with. But you can do that number figure, that messing around with numbers to make it sound plausible all the time. And it distorts the reality of the world in which we live in, because it makes it sound confusing when it doesn't need to, or it makes it sound really simple when it's really actually not it's not simple at all. So it's fudging the figures to make it sound plausible, and they do it all the time, and it's like, this is nonsense.
Well, we all need to realize and accept, including the heliocentric, that the heliocentric belief is based on calculations, not actual measurements. It's all based on calculations. Nothing has been physically measured, and that's what they have to accept.
Well, it actually all starts at a slightly earlier point. Hello, Jaron, by the way.
What's up, Oren?
Good to have you on the show here. Yeah, it starts a little earlier. What it starts with, all of it, is assuming that the lights in the sky we see are physical in nature, have locations, and have distances. And then if you start out by assuming that, which is psychologically very easy for humans, because all humans tend to show a certain symptom that I coined as physicality assumption bias, because yeah, if you see something on a screen in a movie, your mind will suspend your disbelief that that is just a flat screen showing lights, and you will imagine it to be physically sort of tangible within the back of your mind. Yeah, it's only a movie. And the same goes for the heavenly bodies. And once that assumption starts to take hold, then yeah, you're going to have like positions and distances and this entire network or framework for what that is supposed to be, all in relation to the Earth, which the Earth is of course very tangible. You can measure it, you can go to locations, you can pick something up, but we have none of that, of any of the heavenly bodies. That's where it all starts, assuming that all these things out there really are physical things that have positions for which there is no proof at all. And then once you take on that assumption, then you get the giant mathematical framework for what distance they are supposed to be in relation to each other and to the Earth and everything that comes along with it. And it could fit all kinds of models. You could go anywhere with that.
Land on the moon, and then you have people grow up thinking that anybody can just stand anywhere on a sphere and be fine.
Yeah. Mind if I add my 2
cents? It's like 2 steps ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Darwin. Have you got something else you want to add? Because I'm hoping to have my 2 cents at this point.
No, that was basically it. I enjoyed the conversation, but I just wanted to show. Sure. Yeah, you were basically throwing up and forth all this maneuvering room in the maths, like the distances, what baseline assumption of the distances and the sizes you would have and the shape of the Earth, how you can maneuver in that framework. But in actuality, it all starts out with the assumption that all these things that we see in the sky are physical. That's where it really starts. Just wanted to, throw that in there. So go ahead.
Well, while we've got Jaron, I wanted to throw in a few keywords. I didn't actually watch your debate, but there was lots and lots of discussion about what happened on it. And you've said a few keywords on the panel today that I want to talk about. One was prediction, one was science, and one was models. Now, what they tried to force you to do, from what I can ascertain, is tie yourself to a quote-unquote model. Is that correct?
Right.
Right. Well, models are pseudoscience. So when you said, oh, that's interesting that Red said that because he's a science believer, well, they've hijacked a lot of these terms, the other one being prediction. Well, these science believers, it's good that they're categorized that way, because you can then hold them to account with science, because there's a special kind of prediction in science, and it's called a hypothesis. And what they're doing is they're substituting out scientific predictions with models. And models aren't scientific, they're pseudoscience. They don't prove anything at all. You know, they're not based in the real world. They're not backed up with systematic experimentation. They don't have an independent and dependent variable. They're not science. It's as simple as that. Same goes for astrophysicists. None of them are scientists. They're not using independent and dependent variable. They sit outside of the bracket of science. But they've hijacked science to give themselves credibility, to sound like it's valid. Because in science, you're validating a hypothesis with systematic experimentation. And if, like most people, you get the education system telling you that at a very early age, you will remember that science proves things. Now they've got a there's an aside to that as well, which I won't go into here, but essentially all science does is establish cause and effect. It's very, very narrow, but because it proves that cause with experiments, using the word science works to their disadvantage. In other words, science is actually on our side and definitely not on their side. So whenever it comes to somebody saying, what's your model, or this is my model, models are pseudoscience. You know, if they want to claim they are scientific models, then you can ask them for their hypothesis, which is a very specific thing, a very special thing, because it's a scientific prediction. And when they present a model and say, here's my prediction of what we will see in this photograph, here's my prediction of what we should see in the stars, it's like, well, this isn't science, it's not a scientific prediction, that would be a hypothesis. And if they claim, well, no, it is science, well, give me your hypothesis then. So predictions in science are hypothesis, and models are pseudoscience, and science is on our side. That's hopefully as concise as I can get it.
Yeah, you might actually enjoy a little bit of it, because I was saying the same thing. I said, you know, everything you're doing is confirming, and confirming is pseudoscience. You know, you're not trying to disconfirm, which would be actual science. You're not trying to go out and actually prove against your theory. You're trying to prove your theory. That's not hard to do. So I was giving examples of proving that Santa exists and how easy that is to do, because you could just go show presents under the tree, and then you could show songs and poems and books and tons of evidence of Santa being real. But it's not until you try and disprove your theory that you'll run into problems.
Precisely, and that's summed up in a hypothesis, because a hypothesis is split into two halves. You've got the alternate and the null, and in essence you're trying to confirm, well, you will, after an experiment, confirm one or the other. You will either nullify or confirm your presumed cause. So if you say, if A, you will have B, i.e. A is your independent variable, B is your dependent variable, A is your cause, B is your effect. If A, then B, well, then your null is the complete antithesis of that. If A, not B. So at the end of an experiment, you're either nullifying what you have presumed to be the cause or confirming it. And those are your only two options. So wrapped up in the hypothesis, this very special kind of prediction, you have exactly that, a means to, at the end of an experiment, say, I got it wrong, my presumed cause did not cause the effect, or I got it right, my presumed cause did cause the effect. And those are the only two outcomes. And that's why hypothesis-driven experimentation is, in essence, science, and does, in essence, prove things. It validates.
It doesn't end there either, because you have to publish your findings and have other people try to recreate your results. And if they cannot, then you've got a problem.
Right.
So it's not about your experiment. It's about other people retrying it and validating it or voiding it.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's not
systematic
just
experimentation.
It's got to be repeatable.
It has to be repeatable. You have to publish, and others, not just peer review, actually have to physically do what you did by your process and repeat the results. But that can be biased too. But in any case, it doesn't end when your experiment is done. You have to publish them. Others have to validate or void.
Yeah, the things of the stars and the sky is not, you know, cosmology or cosmogony, whatever is not testable. You know, it doesn't allow any real testable experiments on the universe. They're philosophies. They try and reconstruct the past, which we know cannot be scientifically proven. You can make estimates, you can make guesses, but you know, they have a pretense of being scientific. They try and come across as if they're scientific, and they're absolutely belief systems. I mean, there's nothing, no, I don't know how you can argue that. It's not science. They've just sold it as science.
It's science. It's science fiction.
Scientism.
Scientism.
Or pseudoscience, that is the correct term.
Yeah.
Anything set outside the bracket of science becomes pseudoscience. And there are uses to pseudoscience, and there are uses to trial and error testing, but they get labelled science. Same with technology. You know, all of this space stuff, if it was real, it would be in the bracket of technology, not science.
Yeah, I agree. We would be making advancements in that department, not having basically gone backwards for 60 years.
Yeah,
So,
regressing.
And that's why,
phone-
I heard.
A cell phone is not science. It's a
Right.
result of
And
technologies. People think,
one
oh,
of the-
there's science. No, it's not.
Yeah, the reason I like the fishing line experiment so much is because it is putting out a risk on your own belief. Because, I know that Sleeping Warrior wasn't in agreement so much, but I certainly would be. I mean, if I winch that line and it cuts into the water by a foot, you can bet your ass I'm going to walk away from that and say that the Earth is curved,
Me
or
too.
at least that section of water is curved. In which case,
Hang on a
too.
minute.
I'd agree
You've
with that.
kind of you've misrepresented me a little bit. What I said was, if it did it once, I would need it validating by doing it again.
Well, but what how would it get into the water? How did
Okay,
it?
but now here's the thing. If it does say pull up, say, if it's neutrally buoyant and you submerge it, what's preventing its neutral buoyancy from, when it's below at a certain level, from being pushed upward?
Wait, why would it be submerged? You mean when we winch it?
Yeah, once you winch it. Wouldn't there be a tension
Because
if it was neutrally buoyant on the
gravity
surface?
is 0.99, so it's not like it.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't give up on flat Earth even if that one said that
Well,
but I don't think it will.
I feel differently because it's one of those. I mean, that's the kind of experiment that people should be doing against the globe, which we never see. They're not going to tell us if any experiment doesn't match.
It's practical.
Yeah, for me, it's a mechanical thing. It's not optical. It's something that I think Nathan said it. I don't have an explanation for why, two lines that were 6 inches above the water, if I winched it, that it would ever enter the water. There's just not an explanation that would make any sense to me there. So it'd be something that I guess I could see what Sleeping Warriors say, maybe do it again, try and figure out if there's another reason why that could happen. But it really is a test that would, is the kind of test that people should be doing. It's one of those where you make risky predictions. You make risky experiments. You don't just be Wolfie and go to Honolulu and check if the sun sets at 270 on the equinox. I mean, that's not a risky prediction. What the hell is that?
Sharon, let me just say, I actually said it was one of your best experiments. I'm not against the idea at all. I'm pro it. I even said that if it showed that the line would drop by a foot and a half in the middle, that would strongly indicate that surface water would curve.
Right.
I'm with you on it. I'm not against you on it at all.
Well,
no,
it's interesting.
the only problem with it, and I put this in a comment, but the one thing is the cleanliness of the water. That's why we haven't gone ahead yet and made any purchases, because if anybody knows of any body of water that's 3 miles that's clean, that's the problem. Is that if there was a stick or something, we couldn't patrol 3 miles worth of water. But if a stick somewhere down the line got underneath the line somehow, that alone could keep it from cutting under the water.
I think after a little bit of conversation, I was going to joke and say, oh, Anthony off air went completely against you, but I won't. But, with a bit of discussion, we basically agreed that it was an excellent test, and were it to go under the water and essentially show you a bulge, I would absolutely jump ship. And I think Anthony agreed. And without doing a round robin on the panel, I'm not going to bother. But that would be my position. I would say, yeah, there's no other explanation. And you might say, let's do it a couple more times. But ultimately speaking, at that point, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to have to start reconsidering my position right now, as soon as it winched and went under. But the Globers in the comments, they're not prepared to put their money where their mouth is. It is a test of faith because, like you say, there is a clear-cut outcome. If it worked perfectly, obviously, you would hope that all conditions were met, and if it didn't, you'd have to do it again. But ultimately, if it worked, it would determine it one way or the other. But the Globeheads, they don't seem to have as much faith in their belief, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect them to either. And I'm not sure if I was globe believers don't like that kind of test. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the ones that are going to confirm their preconceived beliefs. So that's not one that's going to do that, because they look at it and they say, oh wow, that actually means that the water has to curve. It's not anymore just, you idiots, it curves because we know it curves. You actually have to, like you said, put your money where your mouth is, which I'm willing to do, and I've been doing that for 3 years, saying if you can show me an experiment that proves it. And no, I don't mean go to Honolulu and check if the sun sets in the west at 270 on the equinox. That's not proof that the ground I live on, and neither is looking over long distances over water. Even if water does appear, You know, I think Arwen describes it perfectly. I think there is a slant up that is basically a lensing of the water that's behind what you're looking through, kind of ramping up to your eye level, covering things that are behind it. And even that alone, you can't just go from that to saying, well, people are upside down from me, you know, on the other side of a ball. There's other explanations, and I think we've done a good job of pointing those out and showing those, and the fact that it varies, whereas a curve of the Earth would not vary, would always be the same place. And you know, so I think there's other explanations for all these things, and we just need to. I just want an experiment that I can walk away from and feel confident, at least to a point of certainty, which is what I'm short of right now. You know, to a point of absolute certainty. Whereas if I kept trying to winch that line and winch it, you know, as best as I could, and we clear the path and we keep winching it, and no matter what we do, we cannot get that to cut in the water. And, you know, I'm going to walk away from that and say the Earth does not curve.
I'd say it's definitely conclusive, and that's the kind of test they don't like, right? One that would actually conclude one way or the other. But I hate to do this to you, but when I said science is on our side, the reason it's currently in your framework of imagining that these are science believers, that's how you termed Red's rhetoric, well, it's because they've hijacked words like experiment. So you said it a couple of times. I hate to do this to you, but I want all flat earthers to start taking some consideration to the importance of some words like experiment. I still do this too. I still occasionally say experiment, but an experiment is an actualization of a hypothesis. So again, it's a very specific thing. And when someone's testing shampoo on some bunny rabbit in a lab, they will call it an experiment, but it isn't. There's no independent variable, there's no dependent variable, there's no mirroring, there's no null. It's not an experiment. So when these guys on the globe side say, we're going to do an experiment, and unlike this conclusive test, they would say, point your camera at the horizon, while they simultaneously deny perspective, which is comical. That's the kind of test they like, the tests that are inconclusive, as opposed to ones that would show a curve, which I think your test would.
So are we looking for a clean waterway? Is that the next step, Jaron?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that might exist, but yeah, if anybody knows of a 3 mile, you know, with access, I guess.
What about that canal in the channel in England that was already used for
the Bedford Levels experiment? It's all overgrown and derelict.
Yeah, but there's enough of us to clean it up for a couple of days, isn't there?
Yeah, we could clean up 3 miles. It's not that much of a job.
Well, you'd have to have it constantly monitored throughout the test to make sure, you know, a popsicle stick that kind of went underneath could impact your results. I mean, again, the thing about it is it would, I mean, you'd still think that the winching would pull it through. But yeah, I mean, this guy that does the fishing line says the 50-pound weight, and you know, they do kite fishing off of it. It's called Spectra as the line. It's like the strongest thing that there is. It's like a monofilament of polyethylene kind of line. But he says, yeah, it's so strong. And if you were just pulling it tight with the wind, you know, and you're just doing it in the air, yeah, you're going to have a lot of sag. You're going to have a lot of fade. But by putting it on the water, you're getting rid of all that.
So hang on, just let me get this straight. When you pull it taut, what you're saying should happen is that it should go below the surface by 1.5 feet, right?
Well, we'd kind of decided that we'd probably started at 6 inches above the water, so it would only be a foot. But at 6 inches above the water, we'd just be trying to see if it goes under the water at all. I mean, that's why I always do this too. I try and fudge for the globe, if anything. I mean, that's where if it's 6 inches above the water, then there's no reason why when we pull it taut that it would go into the water if it's flat.
Yeah, but hang on. Isn't the point of the experiment to see the... I thought the point of the I mean, I might have got this wrong and correct me where I do, but my understanding was that the buoyancy of the string would allow it to float on the water. And when you pulled it taut, if the water was curved, the middle of the string would go below the surface of the water in the middle by 1.5 feet based on the 3 miles and the curve that's supposed to be there. Is that not right?
Well, it'd be 1 foot because you're already 6 inches above the water throughout the whole thing.
But you've got to avoid...
I'll just give you some clarity.
What I was saying is I thought you were doing it on the water surface, not above it.
Anthony, so when the line is spread out, obviously there's no tension in the line, so it will still lie on the water, but presumably just for practicality's sake, the 2 winches on either side or 1 winch on one side will be, whatever you said, I forget, half a foot or a foot above the water. But it just means that once it's actually taut, if it's flat, it will be just above the water across both sides. But the practicalities of having a winch that's an inch above the water is just more difficult, I would imagine, and unnecessary.
But I thought the point of the buoyancy of the string was to negate the sag that would be there because of the weight of the string.
Well, that's when you lay it out. I mean, you're going to lay it out, and it's going to be on the water the whole way. It would be floating on the top of the water. But then at the 2 ends, it's 6 inches above. So obviously, right after that, it's not going to be laying on the water. But then when you winch it, you're still going to have sag no matter what. I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah, but that's why I surely the better way to do it is to let the string sit on the surface of the water and then pull it taut in the water on the surface.
But the sag isn't against our position, is it? If it does sag.
What I'm saying is you would remove the sag completely, and if the standing water does curve, then what it should do is dissect that curve by 1.5 feet in the middle. But that's what I based it on, the 3 miles.
Really won't make any difference, a foot or a foot and a half, who cares? If it goes into the water, then then you repeat the experiment and get it lower and just try it again. But basically, initially, you just want to see if it actually goes into the water at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I would, what you're describing, when you have it in the water, I could see it, I could see something causing it to start to go in the water. Because well, if you start, if a little bit of it's in the water, it could start to kind of take the rest of it in as well.
On 3 miles, there's a lot of sag on a single piece of string or rope or whatever. A lot. 3 miles. Think of it. It's not a few inches. It's feet. It's a few meters.
Yeah, I agree.
I got a question, by the way, about that experiment, Jaron. Are you going to leave the hose filled up with air, or are you going to fill it with water? Because that's going to matter. If it is going to be filled up with air, then that air will keep it floating, and if it's water, then it could potentially sink through and all that kind of stuff.
No, this particular test was no hose. It's just talking to a guy that's has a fishing shop out in Australia and trying to figure out what the best line to use. I was kind of asking what the best fishing line is, and then then he started asking questions about what we're talking about, and then he says, "What kind of test are you trying to do?" And then I just said, "Okay, I'll just tell him what we're trying to do." And then he got really into it. He thinks that I'm trying to prove the globe, which is interesting because I think that it helps me in the fact that sure, I want to try and prove the globe. So it's good to have him on the team. He's trying to produce a test that's mechanical, observable, repeatable, that will show the curvature of the earth. And I'm watching carefully and making sure that what we're doing. And then if it does do that, making sure that the test is a good test. I don't care if it's meant to show the globe is true, as long as it's a legitimate mechanical test. I think he's under the assumption that everybody else is, that the earth is a globe. We were taught it was a globe. Therefore, if he constructs his test correctly, it will prove the globe. And I, on the other hand, disagree. I think that it would, there's no way that line would cut through the water, in my opinion.
Jaron, just click my link in the side chat. Nathan, would you just present my screen?
Where am I at?
It's at the thumbnail at the bottom.
On the Hangout, or where am I going?
On the Hangout.
Okay, I see it.
You see that I'm seesawing the horizon over the bulge, yeah? By changing the observer height.
But I don't see a link now, I'm sorry.
Boo. Boo.
I don't know.
Yeah, you just have to click on Sleeping Warrior in the Hangout and you'll see what he's presenting.
Are you talking about... Okay, got you, sorry. It's too early for me. Okay.
So what I'm doing, I'm seesawing the bulge with the horizon by changing the observer height.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that the line of sight above the water is your string. If you're going to do it above the water, you are going to get sag. But the way I understood it was that instead of doing it above the water, you're going to do it on the water, so that at rest, the string is going to be following the contour of the earth, right? The curvature of the earth. But when you pull it taut, if you're not going to do it above water and you're going to do it on the water, then what would happen is that the string would cut through the water and it would drop by 1.5 feet over 3 miles in the middle. So that way you wouldn't have any sag issues or wind issues or anything. You would just have the line dropping below the surface by 1.5 feet. But not just that, you could do 25% of the distance and 75% of the distance, and you would be able to calculate the amount that it should drop, and that would conform to the geometry of the Earth. That would save you an awful lot of hassle and remove a lot of room for error for criticism afterwards if you did it on the surface rather than above it.
3 miles of sag, that's
no sag on the surface.
I know on the surface would be better, but I mean the sag on 3 miles, really?
Yeah, it's huge, Jaron.
Yeah, well, I think the only reason that I'm trying to think of why this guy didn't want to do that, but the problem with it is if you think about, so say we pull it taut and you get, because you're at the surface of the water anyway, and the beginning of it starts to enter the water, and then by its own weight, you start to have it all enter the water. And
but it's buoyant though, isn't it? It would, by its own weight wouldn't be an issue because it's buoyant.
Yeah, it's 0.999. I mean 0.99. I think it's. I have the exact number. Some 7. I could look it up. It's 1/100th of a pound per 7. I'll have to look it up real quick. I have it.
But it floats on water, right?
Yep. Yeah, the line by itself. But I mean, like if you put a flag on it, it's going down.
Sure.
I mean, we're talking about fishing line. Yeah.
Just pull it out across the 3 miles. Sit it on the water, and when you pull it taut, it should cut through the water by 1.5 feet at 3 miles. That's what the curve calc said. But that way you've got no sag, and the water itself is taking up all the sag. So when you pull it taut, it should drop in the middle by 1.5 feet, right?
Yeah, I mean, you think that having it on the water would eliminate
everything?
Everything.
Yeah. The only thing you'd have to do is just basically show that it's on the water at the beginning, show that it's on the water at the end, and when you pull it taut, if you have to put your finger there to hold it or put a pulley in place across it or whatever, just get it so that it's level with the water. It doesn't have to be dead on. It just needs to not be above. Don't try and lift it 6 inches above the water because the weight of the twine itself, you're going to have to put a huge force on it, probably snap it, and then everyone will laugh. But if you did it on the water, the buoyancy of the line would take away all that sag, and when you pull it taut, it should drop the wire by 1.5 feet in the middle, and then you could do it at 75% of the distance and prove the shape of the curvature of the Earth. I thought that's what it was. I must have misunderstood it, but if that's not what it is, just at least consider it as a suggestion because that's a lot better than sag.
I think and this guy that I liked it because he was trying to do things in a way that you wouldn't have flat earthers saying that they having an excuse. So I think that there's something I got to find out exactly why he had decided that. But I think when we were talking about doing it on the surface, there was the problem with it possibly entering the water for whatever reason, whereas it shouldn't do that from 6 inches above. You know, there's no reason for it to enter the water, whereas at the. But I know what you're saying, and yeah, you could easily put like an eye hook at the water surface. And have it enter through there too to keep it right at the water level, because you're not going to be able to have a winch really at the water level. That'd be pretty difficult. But
you could angle it down easily, couldn't you? And that would just remove all the sag arguments because you will get arguments over sag.
Yeah, I mean, actually, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that does seem better. I guess just it's the difference of if you did that, then your flat Earth result still has the line basically in the water. Whereas when you do it with the 6 inches above, your flat Earth result has none of it hitting the water. Or none of it at least entering the water.
Yeah, but isn't the bigger argument that the ball Earth argument requires a 1.5 foot of adjustment in the middle?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Forget the flat Earth argument. You're trying to prove ball, right?
Right.
That's got to drop by 1.5 feet in the middle. No 1.5 feet, it's not a ball.
You think
if you ever put up a clothesline and taken out the sag from even a short line, the amount of force it takes to keep getting the line more horizontal is like exponential. Your thing over 3 miles, I'm sorry, it can't be wenched above the water and not break. I can't see it.
I agree.
I can't see it.
It has to be done on the surface of the water for the sag reason.
It wouldn't be that the line is in the air, but I'm saying it's not. You're obviously at your ends. You're not going to be in the water, correct?
Yeah, you just angle it down into the water so that the water takes, because the twine is buoyant. The water takes the.
What I'm saying is that if you do it with the way you're describing on the water, then both results either either way is with the line in the water the whole way.
Yeah, but the key point is the result, right?
Yeah,
that twine's got to drop by 1.5 feet in the middle.
Right. But you still get, I think Darren's right, because you get a distinct result. In other words, when you're cranking it, it's either going to be trying to fight its way out of the water to get 6 inches above, or it's being pulled down further into the water as it tautens. So it gives a distinct result at the end. It may not be that you can take all the slack out, but ultimately speaking, if it ends with the middle being an inch below the water, yeah, you would say that's sag. If it ends up a foot below the water, which is a considerable amount, it must be being forced below the water with the tension.
But then if it's buoyant, then water will be pushing it back up again, wouldn't it?
Well, exactly. So the tension has to force it under the water.
Just look in chat, because people are supporting me with it. If you do it on, I mean, I'm not saying it's definitely you need to do it that way, but I think that you'd be mad to try and do it above it, because sag is going to be an issue. And regardless of the outcome, I think you're more likely to snap the string and then you're fucked. Really?
Well, the reason we were going to buy 6,000 meters is so we have 1,000 meters to play with first. So we're not going to just go right into it with a 5,000 meter piece of line. We were going to, do a practice round with 1,000, seeing how much we have to pull. But the problem with what you're saying is if we laid it on the water line and then we winch it tight, I feel like people could then say that it's the buoyancy that's holding up the entire string.
That's a good point.
The question would be then would be, okay, well, show me the maths that would be required. What would be the force required for that not to be the case? And let's be honest, if the string's buoyant, it ain't going to be that much, but they can calculate it, right? Because everything's solvable with maths. So you get them to tell you what the force required would be.
Yeah, I've actually seen all that enough, because they all have different numbers, modulus, and there's stretch, there's memory. We have a line without any memory, so it does, basically doesn't, if it gets bent, it doesn't remember that. Let me see here. I can pull up this paper for you to get you the exact weight of it.
There's an elastic limit has to be taken into account, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like the lowest stretch that there is.
But that stretch will be probably in millimeters per meter or something, and then multiply that stretch in millimeters by the number of meters that your run is.
Yeah, so there's spectra dyneema, so spectra spelled like you would think, and then dyneema, dyneema, and yeah, you have the density, which is the grams per. Usually it's per 1K. So like if this is a 3.3 text number, which is 3.3 grams per 1 kilometer, which is great. I mean, that's 33 grams for 10 kilometers. That's the entire weight of the string, and it's extremely strong.
3 grams. That's the equivalent of about 3 cigarettes, right?
Yep. It's the entire 3 miles would be a little less than a half a pound.
Yeah, but let me tell you what my experience was when I got on top of that 100-foot cliff. Right, 100 foot. It was 100 foot, and it's not that tall. But when me and Ranty were trying to put a tape down to measure it, and the tape weighs buttons, right? There's nothing in it. But what we were finding was that the slightest of breezes was causing the tape to do like a skipping rope effect. So it was like turbulent within the air. And what that did was, over a long distance, it was trying to pull me off the cliff, and it was only over 100 feet. So if you had any kind of surface, any kind of like wind on the surface, it's going to make that. I think you're going to get more problems by trying to suspend it.
You might be right. I'll mention that to him, because you're right. I mean, we had already decided if there was any kind of weather at all, you'd have to cancel. It'd have to be perfect.
Just do it on the wall. I'm not. Try doing both. Try doing both, but do it my way first, because then it'll not snap the string.
Well, just to reiterate, kudos, because I know for a fact that no matter what you do, you will come under heavy criticism. No one will be satisfied with what you've done. No one will praise you. You'll get limited thanks.
I don't ever say that. I get so many people that email me that give me ideas that, on my last, when I was thinking we could do the force the line, which was, I thought that was because, what's his name? Brian Mullen to come up with it, that he at least had thought it through to a point worth mentioning. But then I asked for suggestions, and people are awesome. They all give me all these suggestions. Nobody ever asks, at least that I can remember, for credit or says, hey, make sure you mention I'm the one who told you. So I certainly don't try and claim that it's my idea. These are just ideas that come from people, and I just start looking for, evidence of. And I heard you guys talking. Did you ever figure out if it had been done before? I know I was watching the debate, and somebody was saying in the chat that it had been done.
I went to the channel that the guy said, or the webpage that the guy said, and I couldn't find it. So, I mean, I didn't call bullshit on it, but I couldn't find the citation that he claims it was done at. And I did ask him for further info, and I didn't see any response. So it seemed to be a dead end. But if he's in chat right now and he knows exactly where it is, provide the evidence for it. Let's see if it's actually, because I mean, I didn't get closure on the point.
There's also, I know that there's a fishing line calculator that this guy uses. I'll see if I can find it. And then also I did see a few posts in GitHub about the same kind of test, but I don't think they ever did it. It was just talking about it. Let me see this one. Fishing line.
There's a marine searchlight with a 7.5 mile visible beam, straight as an arrow. It's under $2,000, power supply and
you said this
everything.
before, Jimbo.
What?
The problem is they'll just argue refraction. That's it. So,
well, the thing is, if you've ever seen searchlights on buildings at cities and other stuff, or, you see them at car shows or whatever, those lights, those are straight. Even when they pan them out towards the horizon, they're straight. Like, even better than lasers. This is a marine searchlight. It's meant to find ships on the water 7 miles away. Huh?
What kind of beam does it have after 7 miles?
It's visible. It has a visible beam 7.5 miles away. It's a 3,000 watt Xeon marine searchlight. It's probably the best one on earth. German company makes them. But it's under $2,000, and you could put that on a little trailer, get it to the beach with a little generator. It's 240 volts, and Christ, you do the 6 mile test with that bitch, and get a boat on the water and see the light from the side. It's flat. A beam like that, everyone can see it. I mean, that's no messing around, Cuts through stuff, a beam like that. 7.5 mile beam.
Okay.
If you're on the side of it, you'll see it.
But no offense, Jimbo, but I mean, when I was over in St. Bees with Anthony, Spurs Chemo, myself, my wife, my kid, Anthony, and his girlfriend all watched a light turning on from 31 miles away.
The lighthouse light?
Yeah.
It's usually 1,000 watt, and it's made with a different type of lens to disperse the light over a certain area.
Yeah,
this is a beam. This is a beam. I have the True Night, and it's a beam. It's a projector flashlight. The beam on that one is like 10 football fields away. I can light stuff up. I can light up buildings over a mile away with my flashlight.
Cool.
You see it very clearly. And it has a nice beam you can see too. If my little flashlight, it's 2,000 lumens, can light up a building a mile away, and you can see the beam for most of that. This 7.5 mile beam, if you check out the searchlight and its specs and some YouTubes on it, it's meant as an pirate device and stuff, if you will. And it is a deterrent. If you're 7 miles away and they can see you, I mean, you're probably not going to make it very close to a ship. But like I say, it's a focused beam, and it's visible from the side, 7.5 miles. They're used sometimes just to draw attention to stuff, but they're straight beams. They don't have the question of lens distortions around the edges. Different, and like I say, even from the side when it's beaming across a lake or whatever, hell, it's straight. You can read a newspaper 7 miles away or 6 miles away. This son of a bitch. But anyway, it's worth looking at. It's a one-timer. It's cheap, and it's repeatable if it works, and it really demonstrates to a lot of people at once that, wow, look at how flat this is, and look what it lights up on the shore yonder, whatever. I mean, this might be a way to go. It's a light. It's very practical. Lots of people can see it, and the beam is 7.5 damn miles.
Yeah, and we could see a lot further than that. I mean, especially if you believe in the history books. There's that guy Jessen who reported seeing mountains 900 kilometers away, and then there's a couple other books that have, and even one of them by the Geodetic Survey of 1933 They said that they saw in both directions between Shasta and Mount Helena in California. That's 192 miles. And they saw that with no looming, no nothing, with heliotropes, right? Those things with the, they're like little flashing things that you do with the sun. You know, have you ever seen one of those? It's like a little square board that you flip. It's called a heliotrope.
I've heard of them. I think I've probably seen them, but it's certainly been a while.
Yeah, you just, they use it in the Army, get the sun angle at these little flashing mirrors. Is how they used to communicate back in the day. But I know that there's also, in Alaska, they saw the Gulf of Alaska from 330 miles. I mean, those are all like confirmed, at least believed, at least even in the sun. I don't know how that's even possible on a globe. I mean, it's not. But
in the New York Times in 1992 report, they claim they seen a cross of a lighthouse, a Columbus lighthouse, is in Dominican Republic, and they can see it from Puerto Rico, which is a little over 200 miles away.
Well, the Peak Finder website, everything is plotted perfectly flat. All the water and shorelines to the mountains, no matter what view you go and ask for, it's all flat. The waters, it just...
Yeah, they just, the whole idea of level and the way they've changed that now to, I mean, do you remember them teaching that in school, that, you know, people in Australia, they're level with the people in San Francisco? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's such a metaphysical idea.
Well, it's like planes, once they, you know, if you take off in the northern hemisphere, you're taking off at so many degrees, but say you're flat compared to the North Pole, you get to the equator, you're nose down, and your tail is up in the air. And you keep flying south to Australia, you're flying upside down, and you're landing up to the airport. And when you take off the next day, you're taking off down and coming back north the same way. When you get to the equator, you're pointed north-south with your nose in the air vertically and your tail down. You're headed north.
Jaron,
from the south. Just ridiculous.
Jaron, have you had any feedback from any of the ballers on the idea of this 3-mile twine experiment test?
No, because I mean, really, I didn't tell anybody about that. I told obviously David, and I think he came on and said it, but it wasn't really ready yet for kind of critique. It was still kind of going through the process. So no, I haven't been really looking for any. I just watched you guys talk about it, and that was pretty much it.
It'd be interesting to see what protagonists on their side would say about it, because it would prove it one way or the other, but it's whether they would accept it or not.
Which is great. You know, just anything like that maybe makes somebody think of something else that would work, because I think everybody agrees that the force the line experiment, this is kind of the same idea. You know, it's just such a distance that makes it difficult.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do it. Consider it up below the surface, on the surface, rather than trying to lift it up, because I'm not sure that would work. But anyway.
Yeah, I think the people that talk. Did you see? I put the link in the. I put it inside the Google Hangout chat.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, that's the calculator.
Fishing line experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's things out above my head as it is anyway. I was trying to fill that in the other day, and I was like, getting to some place I just couldn't get it all filled out. But somebody else might be much better at that. And then also there is, if I can find the other thing, I'll put that in there too. But no, I think it's a great idea too, and it's one of those kind of like what I was calling thread the needle, which in my most recent returned email about the laser that I wanted was like $44,000. Like, no. So I think that getting the laser to do what I thought originally a laser would be able to do seems a lot harder than I thought. But that experiment, I think I would have walked away saying the same thing as well. That because it would give a definite result. Either you could thread the needle through those holes in 4 panels, in which case it would, you can only do that if the Earth was flat. And if you couldn't, well, you should be able to if it's flat. Therefore, if you're not able to, it would have to tell me that it's curved. But I don't think the laser is possible. And people started saying, oh, well, you could put different little focusers in each hole, but then it just gets, I don't want to do that, because then it's not, then I would walk away from it and say, well, it could have been because one of those was off angle. And that's the problem. I don't want to ever have that kind of second thought. Anybody else had any good ideas for that kind of test or measurement? Anything that I'm trying to get away from optics now, just because, like, you know, as Nathan said, you're just going to have people say it's refraction or diffraction, or that the light is curving with the Earth. There's too many outs.
Just talking of refraction or diffraction in this instance, have you heard of Aries diffraction?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a big part of what we see.
Yep, very much so. Zachary Sabala was kind enough to go through it with us while we were on Iron Realm Media. Absolutely superb explanation that he gave. I'm hoping, if I can twist his arm, that he'll do the same on here and go through it again.
That's on their show?
That was on Iron Realm. I mirrored it as well. But yeah, he just went through it. It was a little bit, because he's on a phone, he's got them doing the slideshow, so it's a little bit sketchy in places, but you can easily follow along. It makes perfect sense. You'll definitely understand how he's summarising it. But yeah, Zachary Sabala, he gave out hints of doing this about a month or two ago.
Is that Good Times for All?
Good Times for All, that's it. Yeah.
One of the best channels.
Superb,
underrated channels that's out there.
Definitely.
He does an excellent job at some of the experiments the one he did of the black tiles in his warehouse floor. For the first time, I saw an experiment show me that ramping up, and then the hard line of the horizon, and then things falling behind it. I mean, that alone, if Globers were being intellectually honest, is such a dagger to the globe that but again, we're not getting anybody who's ever been on the globe side who is starting to say, oh, you know what, I was wrong about, because they come out swinging with, you're an idiot, you're dumb, you don't understand, you don't get science. And then you've kind of cemented yourself in that hole where you can't admit you were wrong.
Well, it's like when I show a Glober a 50 caliber fired straight up. Its round trip time for the bullet is 1 minute and 50 seconds. Well, if that were at the equator, it should move this axial rotation, both the rifle and the shooter, about 30 miles away in that 1 minute and 50 seconds. Where I am, it should move me and the gun, about 15 plus miles away. But you shoot that 50 cal straight up, I get to your bunker because it's coming straight back down at 500 miles an hour 1 minute and 50 seconds later. Now, the Globers always say, oh, it's because it's in its own frame of reference. Okie doke.
Jaron, you've worked with lasers. At what point is a laser dead accurate? What sort of distances?
I'd say a mile is pretty...
So we could work along with a laser alongside the fishing wire just to work out that sag that we're expecting before we actually do the eventual experiment.
Yeah, I also like the idea of taking two lasers and pointing them at each other and then seeing if they cross beams, which would be required on a globe because they should both be aiming up in relation to each other. So that's another good idea. But yeah, I didn't think about doing it with. So you're saying like test a mile first or something?
Yeah, test the sag on the line if you've got a laser that would give you an accurate reading or measurements.
I actually have the numbers of what the sag would be. I'll have to pull that up for you.
Yeah, I was looking at that fishing line experiment thing. Whatever you'd put in the top there of 300 meters, it says line sag a few boxes down of 0.1759 millimeters, which is hard. It's nothing, is it? Over 300 meters. That's if I'm reading the this calculator correctly.
Yeah, it's tough because there's so many things you have to input, but all those numbers are available for any kind of fishing line, and really you can find better stuff if you go to, I know one of the sites is called Goodfellows USA. I think Goodfellows USA is that's where you can get the polyethylene. They're like filament based, thread. Basically, they're threads. They're super strong. Like, you've heard of talk about like carbon nanotubes and things like that. I mean, we're getting to the point where some of the stuff that's being made. Did you notice that? I don't know if anybody noticed that that it's Honeywell. Wouldn't that be funny if we proved the globe wrong with Honeywell? But they're the ones who make that spectra.
Oh, okay.
They make, the so-called pendulous veins that are in every artificial horizon that didn't exist before 1950 or something. Now they're needed. Yeah, it's spectrafishing.com is the name of the site for Spectra by Honeywell. Yeah, I just went to that site. So it says 4 times stronger than nylon. Just to give different little facts, 2.6 million pounds sections of the new San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge were lifted into place with slings made from Spectra fiber. So I mean, it's stronger than I think people think. It's not just fishing line.
I mean, I think the laser alongside the fishing line would be quite useful because of the refraction argument. So in other words, you've kind of got, it's not even redundancy. You've got an extra part of the test that's sort of, you can cross-reference a different methodology, and that methodology is light as opposed to something physical. So yeah, I would see it as a massive advantage, because then you get your result, but you also show what the light is doing at the same time.
You mean for a shorter test? Or, I mean, the problem with the light is that, we've pretty much learned that you can't do it above water. It's just, it breaks up. It's no matter, even if you do it at night, it seems like there's a residual, because the worst part of the air anywhere is always going to be above the water.
Right.
Because you're always going to have some evaporation going, which is going to be a distortion of the air. So, and if you, I mean, there probably needs to be more tests in the middle of the night, but it just seems like the laser light over the water has been a problem.
Fair enough.
I don't know.
Anything else anyone wants to add? If you've not had Jaren's ear before, now's your chance, because I'm going to round out soon.
Make sure you beat that NASA thing like continuously. Make sure people are well aware of it, because I think that's probably one of the best arguments to date. If you've paid for it and they've took the payment, that creates a legal relationship with you and NASA, and that's not something that anybody's had before, as far as I'm aware. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I just think it's like I said in that video. I mean, imagine if we handled criminals that way. It's just really, it's such a joke to them to describe it as freedom of information. Freedom of information would be that I get to walk into NASA and say, show me this spacewalk from 2006, and they have to provide it right then. Just as if the police came in and tried to get something from me, they would be able to demand it, right then. They don't tell me at my door, hey, by the way, we're suspicious about your activities here. We'll be back in 3 months, and you better clean up your shit. Because if they did that in that time, I would be able to clean up.
Oh, it would be one step worse than that, though, because then you would be, if you're NASA in that situation, you would then turn around to the police and say, and give me $1,000.
Right. You have to pay me for my time and effort to clean up my debauchery. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction, right? Next time you apply for something from them, if you do it again, that $1,000, it'll be $7,000.
Well, I thought mine was bad. There's one other one where they charged, they came back with $1 million. Can you imagine that?
What were you asking for? Proof of R?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's there. I don't know. That company is not on the up and up. I was going to ask something else.
Well,
watch the video I put up here in a few minutes. It's pretty funny considering those guys from yesterday. They are some jokers.
I'm going to say, just before we run out, that if you think of, because we've discussed all the things that's been terrible about your dealings with NASA and their excuses and delays and obfuscation, but the converse is, if it was true, yeah, this is important information and they're supposed to be slick and efficient, they would have it on a hard drive, and without any fee, they would just say, yeah, okay, and it would be emailed. Can you cope with it in low res? I'll email it you. Is that all right? Oh, well, if you want it in a slightly better file format, then we'll have to post you a discount and it'll cost you $10. But this $1,000 nonsense, it's just ludicrous. It's just giving you the runaround because they haven't got what they say they have got. They haven't got this footage. If they did, it would be on a hard drive. It would be accessible in seconds. They'd email it to you. There wouldn't be any messing around if it was real, which it isn't.
Yeah, just you would put everything digital. I mean, it's 2018 for God's sakes. It doesn't make any sense that you would put things on magnetic tapes and then store them in a silo.
I could understand them if it was like the original reels from the cine film that was recorded on the Apollo missions or whatever. You know, they got to blow the dust off them from an archive somewhere. If that was really the case, yeah, I get a fee for that because that you've got to digitally transfer them over to current topics formats. I get that, but something that's already there that they've already got, I don't really see how there's a chargeable anyway because it's stuff that they've already been paid by the public to produce and store. It's their job, right? So why is it an issue?
Why would you store it so that you need to in the future do more work? And then for her to come back, because I asked in that first time, I said, how is it so expensive? You need to explain to me why it's so expensive. So she came back and said it's 12 hours worth of work. And I said, it's a 7-hour spacewalk. How could we be in a point in time where it's less than real time? You could film it with a video camera and it would take 7 hours. So how could it be less than that? I mean, how could
do you think you'll get something off them, or do you think you'll get nothing?
No, I think I'm going to get something. I just think it will be very poor. She's already kind of set it up for that. Oh, sorry, we don't have cameras everywhere. Oh, sorry, we only have one helmet cam. Oh, sorry, some of the parts of the Russian segment aren't on camera. So they can literally give me just some B-roll stuff.
Sanitized.
Do you know which astronauts were meant to be on the spacewalk?
Yep.
Was Barney the dinosaur one of them?
You have to watch the 3-minute or whatever segment. It's hilarious. The golfing segment is a joke. And at least if you ask me, I mean, I don't know, it just looks like there's stuff going on behind it that they didn't do a good job of blacking out. That's what it looks like they do to me, that there's something that either is done through wiring or I've mentioned before, I think it could be scuba divers, that they simply have live editors that are, how easy is that? You sit there and wherever the little guys are, you just black them out. They wear green screen, like the Green Man suit, and they're just colored out black. And since space is black, I mean, what's an easier fraud than that? It's actually not even difficult to do for them. And then you're never going to find a video with like a scuba diver in it. I remember I made a video saying that I thought I saw when people were going crazy in the comments, like there's no scuba diver there. And it's like, no, I'm not saying that you can see them. That would be ridiculous that these people are in charge of their own footage. How would they let out their own demise? You're going to have, it's just not going to happen. You have, even if you have 10 seconds of which any show has that's live, if you have 10 seconds of editing first, you're going to make sure that none of that stuff shows. But I do think they can make mistakes in like this particular case where I think they tried to rush something. I think they used the wrong color, and you'll have to look at it for yourself. Just look up, like I said, astronaut hits longest golf shot. It's 2 astronauts, and you can look behind it, and what's usually black space looks a dark gray, and you can actually see the boxes moving around, and it looks like somebody's behind them, that they're being held up, or I don't know. You'll have to check it out.
What's the name of the video that you've just uploaded?
No, I haven't uploaded it yet. I did it upload? No, it's going to be called. Do I have a name for it yet? I don't have a name for it yet. Liar, liar, something around that.
Oh, okay, this is for the sort of summary of what happened on the debate, right?
No, it's more about after the debate. They had a flat Earth roast last night. Yeah, I think that's what it was called, Flat Earth Roast or something. And I just happened to tune in, and then it was just funny because I saw somebody in the chat say something to Steve, who I've renamed. His new name is Deceive McRae, so make sure you get that right. And he put in there, oh, well, email me this. And then I said, oh, I'll email him. So I emailed him, told him to ask Kyle something on the air. And then I actually saw it happen. I went back, put on record on my screen, and you see Steve sitting there reading the email. Then he starts thinking about it. Then he types something, and then you see Kyle pick up a little thing. So they were like communicating with each other about how they were going to address my thing. Well, it's just funny because it's just all them lying. It's just hilarious. And then he says, Kyle's even the one who says, oh, Steve, you have something to ask me? You have something you want to address? He's like, oh, yeah, it's actually a question for you. He's like, oh, for me? But they were just talking about what I said. It's just funny. You have to see the video. It's hard to explain. They're a bunch of liars. And I can't stand liars. If there's anything that I hate, it's because they're a waste of space. They make everything in life pathetic. Would be a great place if it wasn't for liars.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, I'm sure you know exactly what to do. But if you like the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!